They were the most dangerous men of the ancient world because they fought not for country, not for gods, not even for honor. They fought only for coin, from the scorching deserts of Egypt to the marble palaces of Persia, from the rocky hills of Greece to the blood-soaked fields of Rome. Mercenaries stood at the center of history's greatest struggles. They were the sword that kings could buy, the shield that empires could rent. But they were never truly owned. One day they defended a pharaoh. The next they marched beneath the banners of his enemy. They were celebrated as saviors, cursed as traitors, feared as the storm that could turn the tide of war. And yet rulers could never resist them, because mercenaries offered what every king desired: instant power, ready-made skill, warriors forged in blood long before the battle began. But behind every contract lurked the same question, whispered in palace halls and war councils. If loyalty can be bought, how long before it's sold again? War has always demanded men. But what happens when kings and emperors run out of their own? They turn to outsiders, to strangers willing to fight for a price. These were the mercenaries, the soldiers of fortune, and their story begins in the world's earliest empires. In Egypt, more than 3,000 years ago, the pharaohs sat upon golden thrones, ruling a land both blessed and cursed. Their kingdom was rich, but it was surrounded by danger. Libyan raiders from the west, Nubian warriors from the south, and ambitious powers rising from Mesopotamia in the east. Egypt's own armies could not be everywhere at once, so the pharaohs reached beyond their borders. They paid the Nubians, renowned masters of the bow. These men, dark-skinned archers from the Nile's southern lands, were feared across the ancient world for their precision. To the Egyptians, they were more than soldiers. They were a weapon that could be bought. The idea spread like wildfire. Across the Mediterranean, rulers discovered that gold could buy what training could not. Why wait years to raise new soldiers when you could hire veterans tomorrow? For the desperate, it was an irresistible solution. For the mercenaries, it was opportunity. By the 7th century BC, Greek hoplites, citizen soldiers armed with bronze armor, heavy shields and long spears, had become the most sought-after warriors of their age. They fought in the phalanx, a disciplined wall of men, shields locked, spears thrust forward, advancing like a single living beast. Kings of Egypt and the vast Persian Empire, ancient Iran, paid mountains of silver to recruit these Greeks. For poor farmers scraping a living from rocky Greek soil, this was a chance to win wealth, fame, or simply survival. But mercenaries were not always poor. Some came from lands where war was the heartbeat of life. In Thrace, the Balkans, wild-eyed warriors carried curved swords called rhomphaia. They charged with ferocity that terrified even disciplined legions. In the steppes north of the Black Sea lived the Scythians, nomadic horse archers who could ride at full speed while unleashing storms of arrows. They too sold their skills, riding into foreign wars for gold and plunder. And yet mercenaries were never truly safe to trust. Their loyalty was not to flag or throne, but to silver and gold. A king who failed to pay them might find his mercenaries fighting for the enemy by dawn. From the beginning, they were both saviors and traitors in waiting. This was the birth of mercenary warfare, not born from loyalty, but from necessity. Not a bond of honor, but a contract of coin, a sword that could win empires or turn against them. By the 5th century BC, Greece was a land of rival city-states, Athens, Sparta, Corinth, each locked in endless conflict. War was not an occasional event, it was a way of life. And in this crucible of violence, Greek soldiers gained a reputation that spread far beyond their homeland. The Greek hoplite was unlike any other warrior of the time. Armed with a bronze helmet, a heavy round shield called the hoplon, and a spear nearly 8 feet long, he was trained to fight not as an individual, but as part of a machine. The phalanx, their signature formation, was simple but devastating. Rows of men standing shoulder to shoulder, shields overlapping, spears thrust outward. When the phalanx advanced, it was like a wall of iron crushing everything in its path. This deadly discipline caught the attention of foreign rulers. In Egypt, pharaohs paid Greek hoplites to serve as their royal guard. In the mighty Persian Empire, modern-day Iran, kings employed Greeks to fight in wars stretching from Asia Minor to Babylon. To them, the Greeks were the perfect tool, tough, organized, and deadly. But the most famous story of Greek mercenaries came in 401 BC. A Persian prince named Cyrus the Younger wanted to seize the throne from his brother, King Artaxerxes II. To win his gamble, he needed soldiers. And so he turned to Greece. From across the Aegean Sea, nearly 10,000 hoplites sailed east, hired with Persian gold. At first, the plan worked. The Greeks smashed through enemy lines at the Battle of Cunaxa near Babylon. But Cyrus himself was killed in the fighting. Suddenly, the mercenaries were stranded, leaderless, deep inside hostile Persia. Most men would have surrendered or been slaughtered. But these were Greeks. Led by the soldier-philosopher Xenophon, the mercenaries fought their way north, across rivers, deserts, and mountains. They battled Persian cavalry, survived ambushes, endured hunger and frost. At last, after months of suffering, they reached the Black Sea. When they saw the water, they cried out in joy, "Thalata! Thalata! The sea! The sea!" For the first time, the Western world realized what disciplined mercenaries could achieve. They had marched thousands of miles, fought countless battles, and survived. The tale of the 10,000 spread like legend. And soon, kings everywhere wanted Greeks in their armies. To hire a Greek mercenary was to buy not just a man, but a formation, a fortress of muscle and iron that could decide the fate of empires. Yet beneath the glory lay a darker truth. Greek mercenaries fought for whoever paid best. One day they defended Egypt. Another day they marched under Persian banners. They were loyal only to their silver, and that made them as dangerous to their masters as to their enemies. Rome, the eternal city. By the 1st century BC, it was no longer just a city, it was an empire, stretching from the misty forests of Gaul to the deserts of Syria. Its legions, disciplined and relentless, were feared across the known world. But Rome's secret weapon was not only the legionnaire, it was the foreign soldier, the mercenary who fought in Rome's name. The Romans called them auxilia, meaning helpers. They were not Roman citizens, but outsiders, warriors from conquered lands or allied tribes. Some joined willingly for pay, others for the promise of citizenship, still others for plunder. Whatever their reason, they became the empire's lifeblood. From Numidia in North Africa came light cavalry, unmatched in speed and maneuver. They rode without saddles, guiding their horses with nothing but rope and instinct. Against heavy enemies, they darted in and out, hurling javelins before vanishing into the dust. In the forests of Germania, tribesmen wielded massive spears and axes. Fierce, brutal, and fearless, they terrified Rome's enemies when unleashed in battle. From the wind-swept highlands of Britannia, slingers hurled stones with deadly precision, cracking helmets and shattering bones. The auxilia gave Rome what its citizen legions lacked: flexibility. Roman legionnaires were heavy infantry, ironclad, disciplined, devastating in formation. But they could not do everything. They could not outshoot the archers of Crete, nor outrun the cavalry of Numidia. So Rome bought what it needed, and with it, Rome conquered. Yet trust was fragile. Auxiliaries were loyal to Rome only so long as Rome gave them land, gold, or hope. In times of crisis, some turned against their masters. During the Great Rebellion of Boudica, queen of the Iceni tribe in Britannia, 60 AD, many auxiliaries deserted Rome's side and joined her uprising. In Germania, whole auxiliary units mutinied, switching to fight against the empire they once served. Still, Rome could not survive without them. By the height of the empire, nearly half the Roman army was made up of auxiliaries. Without mercenaries, the legions were blind and vulnerable. With them, Rome became unstoppable. But therein lay the paradox. The strongest empire the ancient world had ever seen was built not only on loyalty, but also on borrowed blades. soldiers who might abandon Rome the moment her grip weakened. The auxiliaries were Rome's greatest advantage, and its silent threat. If Rome was the empire of citizens, Carthage was the empire of traders. Founded by the Phoenicians on the coast of North Africa, near modern-day Tunis, Carthage rose from a merchant city into a naval power that ruled the Western Mediterranean. But Carthage had one great weakness: its own citizens rarely fought. Instead, Carthage fought its wars with money. Gold from trade flowed into its coffers, and with it they hired men from across the ancient world. Iberian warriors from Spain, wild and fearless with long swords. Gauls from France, towering men with painted bodies and savage axes. Numidian cavalry from the deserts of North Africa, riding swift horses and striking like lightning. And mercenaries from Sicily, Sardinia, and beyond, an army of nations bound only by pay. It worked for a time. With their mercenary armies, Carthaginian generals clashed with the might of Rome in the First Punic War, 264 to 241 BC. The struggle lasted more than 20 years. In the end, Rome won, and Carthage, drained of money, could no longer pay its mercenaries. What followed was chaos. In 241 BC, tens of thousands of unpaid mercenaries, Gauls, Iberians, Numidians, rose in revolt against Carthage itself. At first, it was a demand for wages, but quickly it became a war of vengeance. The mercenaries laid siege to cities, burned fields, and butchered civilians. This was the infamous Mercenary War, also called the Truceless War, because no mercy was given, no prisoners taken. Carthage, the city that had trusted outsiders to fight its battles, suddenly found itself surrounded by those very outsiders turned enemies. For 3 years, the revolt raged. Atrocities piled upon atrocities. Whole towns were massacred. Prisoners were tortured to death. Carthage teetered on the edge of destruction, not by Rome, but by its own former soldiers. Only through brutal determination did Carthage survive. General Hamilcar Barca, father of the famous Hannibal, took command. With cunning strategy and ruthless discipline, he crushed the rebellion. The mercenaries were slaughtered to the last man. Carthage endured, but the lesson was clear. Mercenaries could build an empire or destroy it from within. And for Carthage, this scar would never fade. When Hannibal later marched his mercenary army across the Alps to challenge Rome in the Second Punic War, the shadow of the mercenary war still haunted the city. Every payment, every contract was a gamble with survival. When we think of mercenaries, we often imagine Greeks, Romans, and Carthaginians. But the East, China, India, and the vast steppes of Central Asia had its own traditions of soldiers for hire. Their stories are less familiar, but no less dramatic. In ancient China, during the chaotic Warring States period, 475 to 221 BC, kingdoms fought endlessly for dominance. Some rulers turned not only to philosophers and strategists, but also to wandering warriors. Known as yuxia, knights errant, and ki, guest soldiers, these men offered their swords to whoever needed them. They were often skilled, sometimes ruthless, and they sold not only their strength, but their knowledge of strategy. A prince might host dozens of such retainers, each waiting for the moment his talents could be used in battle. To pay them was to buy both muscle and brains. Farther south in India, mercenaries were a constant presence in the armies of great kingdoms. The Maurya Empire, 322 to 185 BC, employed foreign fighters, especially cavalry from the northwest frontier. Horsemen from Bactria, modern Afghanistan, and Sogdiana, Central Asia, rode into Indian wars, their skill with horses unmatched. These warriors brought with them new tactics, expanding the reach of Indian kings beyond their own lands. But perhaps the most feared mercenaries of the East were the nomads of the steppe. The Scythians and later the Sarmatians and Huns lived on horseback, their lives shaped by war and raiding. They sold their services to Persia, to Greek kings, even to Chinese emperors. To hire such men was to unleash a storm of arrows, a whirlwind of cavalry that no settled army could easily resist. And the danger was always the same. Steppe mercenaries could be devastating allies, but they were never truly controlled. One season they fought for you, the next they raided your borders. Loyalty meant nothing. Payment was everything. In the East as in the West, mercenaries were a double-edged sword. They gave rulers the strength they lacked. They filled gaps in armies with skills that could not be trained overnight. But they also carried the seeds of betrayal. And in every war, kings had to ask themselves, could they trust men who fought for coin alone? From the deserts of Egypt to the battlefields of Greece, from Rome's auxiliaries to Carthage's mercenary wars, one truth became clear. Mercenaries were both salvation and danger. They were the sword a king could buy, but never truly control. Their legacy did not die with the ancient world. It endured, reshaping warfare for centuries to come. In the Middle Ages, mercenaries roamed Europe in companies called condottieri. In the Renaissance, Italian city-states rose and fell on the backs of hired swords. Even today, in our modern age, private military contractors echo the same ancient bargain. Loyalty traded for coin. But the ancient mercenaries were different. They lived in a world where loyalty to the city, the tribe, or the king was sacred. To fight for money alone was both shocking and dangerously practical. They were respected for their skill, feared for their unpredictability, and hated for their greed. And yet, rulers could never ignore them. The Greeks proved that disciplined mercenaries could march across empires. The Romans showed that auxiliaries could build an empire greater than any before. Carthage learned with blood that mercenaries could also turn and nearly destroy the very masters who paid them. And the East revealed that this was no Western invention, but a universal truth of war. So what, then, is the legacy of ancient mercenaries? It is the reminder that power is fragile, that empires are not built only on loyalty and citizenship, but on the shifting sands of contracts, promises, and pay. And it leaves us with a question that echoes across history. If loyalty can be bought, can victory ever be certain?